Night of tricky words. How many of you remember how to pronounce pachakacha? Yeah? No, I won't pick one of you and torture you. I've also been told tonight that this first word is not Kirsten, it's Kirsten. Learn something every day. And she's our next speaker, Kirsten Reynolds. She's an artist. Kirsten creates large-scale theatrical installations and sculpture that explores the relationship between architecture, language, and the body by engaging the viewer as a participant. If you were here at 3S about 3 weeks ago, you would have seen one of her installations. And her work has been exhibited widely, including the Alvarez Gallery in Stamford, Connecticut, the Dirkover Museum in Lincoln, Massachusetts, and yeah, what was it? The Cordova, everybody. And the Currier Museum of Art in Manchester, New Hampshire. She is the recipient of the Vermont Studio Center Fellowship, the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation Artist Advancement Fellowship, and the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation Artist Resource Fellowship, among others. Thank God she didn't list them. She currently lives and works in Newmarket, New Hampshire. Let's give her a warm welcome.
I threw all those big words in there to see if I could trip him up. Did it work? Yeah, okay, good. So tonight's presentation, the final presentation, and hopefully all of you are awake, is going to be about my work, but more importantly, it's going to be about some of the ideas and other artists and pieces of architecture that I think about as I develop my work. So it's kind of fast-paced. The images are going to run right into one another, and because the ideas are condensed, I am going to stick to my script. So forgive me for that, but hopefully it'll all make sense in the end. I am going to start. Tonight, I'd like to talk about a question that is central to my work. That is, if architecture is the form that orders our experience of space, can uncertainty be expressed in architecture? If architecture as a physical and mental construction creates boundaries, what is space in between? This image is of a scale model that I built to develop one of my architectural installations. So how do we order space? The difficulty of this visual illusion proves just how instinctively we want to establish an order. Whether we see a face or a vase is a test of whether we consider something positive or negative. Positive space is the subject of the design, while negative space is the surrounding area, regarded as empty or not important. This hierarchical bias of figure and ground is evident in the realistic space created by linear perspective. In this Renaissance painting, The Ideal City, depth is created by lines of sight that converge on a single vanishing point in the distance. Yet to create the spatial rendering, the viewer must be fixed at a single point. Space appears frozen and static. It's a small leap to see this hierarchical arrangement expressed in notable architectural designs, such as the Presidio Modelo prison in Cuba, which was based on the idea of the panopticon. Inmates would be watched or feel as if they were watched from the central tower that was in the middle of the prison. This surveillance from a single point was intended to control their behavior. On the opposite end of the spectrum, St. Peter's Square in Rome, designed by Bernini, also locates the viewer at a fixed point. For example, though the colonnade that surrounds the square is 4 columns deep, standing at a specific point marked by a white disc creates the illusion that they are only 1 column deep. It's the manifestation of perfect spatial order. In my research, I've been interested in architectural spaces that seem unimportant, such as passages, doorways, or courtyards. In this painting by Dutch painter Pieter de Hooch, there is no grand plaza, there is no one authoritative place. The women move back and forth between unknown destination points. Gordon Matta Clark was an artist and architect who explored the idea of space in between as a physical and metaphorical rupture. By dissecting suburban homes that were about to be demolished, he exposed the hidden world of domestic spaces and created a new critical experience of architecture. Bruce Nauman, another conceptual artist from the 60s and 70s, explored the complex psychological unease of the space in between. In his performance corridors, he recreated the narrow hallways that might remind you of the paths in the Dutch painting. The green light and the narrow space intensifies the strangeness of being in that space. Sarah Oppenheimer is a contemporary artist who, like Gordon Matta Clark, physically penetrates existing architecture. However, using mirror, glass, and wood, she adds new elements to create complex illusions of space. In this gallery floor, Oppenheimer installed a framed aperture, which was connected to a chute that exited through a window to the floor below. Looking down and through the floor, the viewer could see an angled view into the neighbor's backyard, 4 stories below. In her work, Oppenheimer disrupts the continuity of the existing architectural space. The lines separating figure and ground, interior and exterior, become radically unstable. What I find so interesting about her work is how she uses the experience of an optical illusion within architectural space to trigger an intense physical sensation of the space in between. Looking through this aperture creates a dizzying effect, like vertigo. Using the whole as a formal element, she transforms our assumptions about the solidity of space. As I develop my ideas for my installations, I've been intrigued with images of barn building and the process that they capture, developed toward a final structure. Barn building, or building any piece of architecture, implies a linear process, and raise enough beams and you'll have a complete building. But what happens to spatial organization if the process becomes shuffled? For my installation, The Former Mistake, I built large architectural structures that suggest an ambiguous order to the building process. The structures appear as if they were arrested at a point between construction or destruction. I applied bright, colorful patterns to panels throughout the installation to contrast the mock architectural disaster with absurd playfulness. Fake rags, like this one, drips, and toy-like tacks were scattered throughout the installation as further evidence of a bizarre building or demolition process. This created a narrative structure that could move forward and backward as the viewer moved throughout the installation and discovered the additional sculptural elements. I call these pieces theatrical tableaus. They suggest a story in the midst of unfolding, yet the architectural evidence resists conclusion and therefore disorients a rational ordering of time. Architecture becomes repositioned as a liminal space, in limbo. Liminality is another term to describe the space in between, yet it also suggests that the transitional state is essential for creating new order. I'm particularly interested in how humor is a liminal form. When you laugh, knowing it's mixed with uncertainty. Liminality has a precedent in the trickster figure. Through jokes and absurdity, the trickster can provoke and question authority. The painted faux finishes applied to all of my architectural elements are the trickster in my work. The wood boards and panels you see are painted or printed, often on foam materials. The ambiguity between what is real and what is illusion creates the effect that the architecture emerged from a cartoonish parallel world. What you see is not what you get. This past August, I created a new installation titled Cut for 3S's exhibit Framing Space. This exhibit, which included a performance and video by the Higher Ridge Dance Company, proposed that space is an embodied, continually constructed experience. For my piece, I decided on a more minimal arrangement than previous works to focus on the quality of absence. The installation consisted of 4 architectural frames that were topped by a cascade of yellow arcs that appeared as if they were being joined into a whole form or in a process of being separated. Another piece that was related to the architectural forms rested on the floor, and viewers could move throughout the installation rather than stay at one point, causing a changing points of view and new spatial arrangements. I chose the title Cut because of its multiple meanings. On a playful level, it recalls the world of movies when the director picks up the megaphone and stops the scene. It also names the sudden separation or space of absence. Yet cut can also be a force that activates change. It's a word that signals possibility.